In CS2, strategy and smart play are key components to achieving victory. There's one problem, however. Regardless of how smart you play, you still have to shoot the enemies. Some people aren't so good at that. In this video, I'm going to be showing you 5 different methods that I myself have used to keep my mechanics solid and consistent. One of the first things I started working on in my path to level 10 was my ability to isolate duels to turn unfavorable situations into simple 50-50 gunfights. The map I used for this purpose was called Aim Aztec Place, and it actually has a CS2 equivalent called Aim Rush. This map is designed for the exact purpose of learning to better isolate duels and is good at not only elevating a beginner level player, but keeping them consistent. I used the CSGO version of this map for quite some time as part of my practice routine, but phased it out with time as my mechanics started to become consistent and I felt it was no longer necessary to continue using the map for practice. Now, despite all my praise, I wouldn't recommend solely relying upon this map for practicing duel isolation, as bots can move quite differently compared to humans and will often peek angles super close and instantly dink you in situations where you may otherwise receive fair fights with solid peeking and wider swings. Another method of practicing duel isolation is Refrag's community-made Defender game mode, if you have a Refrag account or are willing to subscribe to the service. Defender places you in some incredibly tough scenarios where you are forced to pick the right fights at the right times to not get overrun by bots. It can be a bit too challenging at times and is not the most realistic, but it's very good at helping you train to isolate fights in high-pressure scenarios and is something I use very often. Between these two practice methods, I would recommend Aim Rush for lower level players, and I recommend that you only use Defender once Aim Rush has gotten too easy for you and you feel like it isn't helping you anymore. Something I do subconsciously while I play the game is thinking about how I expect my enemy to play in the present moment and how I'm gonna counter that. You may be thinking, well, that's obvious, isn't it? But a lot of people skim past this concept and think that it'll evolve naturally along with their game sense. To an extent, that is true, but some players struggle to position themselves naturally in accordance with the situation they're in because they either don't feel comfortable or are too focused on simply hitting their shots. I developed the ability to subconsciously think about my positioning without overthinking by literally just talking to myself while I played. What kind of situation are we in? Given the information that I have presented to the other team and the information they have presented to me, what is their biggest concern at the moment? How are they going to look to counter the setup that they think we have? Quickly asking yourself 1 or 2 questions as you plan to do something will help you naturally develop your game sense and positioning until eventually your conscious analysis becomes subconscious, allowing you to focus more on things like your raw aim, crosshair placement, and hitting heads. The longer you spend practicing certain skills in CS, the more you may start to notice that it feels like your practice is just a boring cycle as opposed to a form of practice through repetition. Your goal with practice should be to keep as many of your skills up to par as possible, and that becomes difficult to achieve without a varied practice routine. You should try to keep your practice routine varied by practicing different skills on different days or for different lengths of time. I don't practice as rigorously as I used to, but my old practice routine used to consist of 15 minutes of Aztec Place, followed by 10 minutes of spray practice, followed by 15 minutes of Refrag's Crossfire game mode on different maps. The last 20 minutes of my routine would be DMing with various guns, usually swapping between the different rifles and the scout. After a while, this routine grew to be boring and unnecessary, as I got better at isolating gunfights and my spray control improved. To compensate for this, I created a secondary warm-up routine that didn't make use of Aztec Place and shortened my spray practice to 5 minutes to turn it into a spray warm-up. This left an extra 25 minutes in my routine that I needed to fill. I filled this gap by practicing different aim scenarios, usually using the aimbot's bot movement settings and practicing my counter-strafing, or using the various YPrac maps CSGO had on the workshop. Nowadays, only the 5e maps exist, but the CS Stats training map is one that I recommend as part of your routine. Utilizing different practice routines intermittently, or even just mixing up your normal routine, can help make practice more engaging, while also allowing you to keep all of your vital skills in check. I also would like to acknowledge that some people don't really need crazy warm-up or practice routines. I myself usually only do a couple of different things to practice, using the rest of my time to do things like demo review or theory craft. One of the most important things you'll notice when watching a professional CS player is just how stoic they usually are. I don't mean that in the sense that they don't tilt or don't panic, I mean that in the sense that when somebody pops up on their screen, they simply aim and shoot. This is one of the most underrated skills I see failing in lower ranked players. If possible, watch one of your demos or recordings and look at how you react when somebody is on your screen. Are you flicking your crosshair around to adjust for poor crosshair placement, or are you simply having trouble with your tracking aim? When somebody peeks into you, do you panic? Or do you aim and shoot, ready to win the engagement? A lot of players tend to become too reactive when they see enemies. If you are holding an angle, you need to be ready to kill the person peeking you. Similarly, if you are clearing angles, you need to be ready to shoot first when you see somebody. At the highest level, and especially on the T side, the winner of a duel is most often decided by who reacts and shoots their gun first. It's hard to react quickly to things when you're jumpy. I like to refer to the training of this skill as honing your killer instinct. Try to think of enemies on the map simply as part of the geometry. They may move, they may fight back, they may throw utility, but they are always on the map. No matter what you do, no matter how many times Valve changes the map, there will always be 5 of these things somewhere on the map. Don't be afraid to take gunfights, don't feel uneasy about where the enemy could be. Simply take the information you know, apply it to your game, and when you see an enemy, point and shoot. The last thing I wanted to touch on in this video is not being reliant on mechanics. Mechanics are extremely important for CS2, and at the end of the day you will always have to click on the other team, but there is so much more to the game than just mechanics. I have found that the more I rely on my mechanics in a match, the worse I perform and the less sharp my aim feels, even if it's good. When my fundamentals are feeling consistent, so are my mechanics. When you focus too heavily on your aim, you lose track of all the things that come together to form good Counter-Strike gameplay. If you are working on your mechanics and are not seeing improvement, try to work on other parts of your game. This is something that has helped me during slumps for a very long time. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your aim is to let it suck. Are you missing shots that you feel you wouldn't normally miss? What good is acknowledging that gonna do for you right now? If you hyper-fixate on your aim during this game, is that actually going to help you succeed? What if the reason your aim doesn't feel good is because you're not comfortable with the situations you're in? Are you putting yourself in situations where the only way you can achieve a positive outcome is out-aiming somebody? I know it's kinda corny for a video about mechanics to circle back around to game sense and decision making, but I legitimately feel that in times where my aim has struggled, focusing on other things has helped me recover. If your aim isn't on, it isn't on. Getting frustrated over it and going on a mad crusade to fix it simply isn't sustainable for your future in Counter-Strike. Having concluded the main topics of this video, I just wanted to quickly give a mental tip that I think a lot of people take for granted, which is judging yourself realistically, but not too harshly. One of the biggest problems I have as a player myself is judging myself by my peaks and internalizing my low points. Every time I play Counter-Strike, I expect the best CS I know I can produce, and the truth is that you will never be playing your absolute best, because consistency is physically impossible. Regardless of how long you use the same peripherals, the same settings, no matter how much work you put into your aim and game sense, you will always have days where you play poorly and days where you play really well. At the same time, you shouldn't be afraid of acknowledging your own faults as a player, because recognizing those patterns can make your practice infinitely more valuable and will help raise your floor. Thank you all for watching this video. I know it was pretty poorly made and the editing style may feel a bit janky and sometimes not engaging, but I'm mostly using this video to test the waters. Expect more videos and live streams coming in the future, as well as higher production quality. See you all around.